Who was the worst student in your high school, and what did they do that was so bad?
A student was suspended for farting.
We just started silent reading when I heard the awful sound. It was so bad we had to leave the classroom.
I was just sitting in here reading, and then we heard the big one. And everybody started laughing because it was so funny.
Bruh.
But then Johnny passed out, and everybody had a hard time breathing.
Local hazmat crews were on site today to make sure that the classroom was cleaned up and it can be reused again.
Content warning, self-harm and self-terminations are on this video, please be advised before proceeding. Story 1. He violently murdered his mother's client the summer before our senior year. His mother was a home health aide and her client was 87 years old. He did it so he could steal her car. Now he's serving 25 to life. I know a guy who did the opposite. Neutralize his mom and her home health aide. I think he is in a mental hospital still. Not sure if he has gone to trial. He used to teach children's karate. Story 2. He put LSD in a teacher's drink and they tripped balls. 12th grade he got arrested as he should have, he was such a little prick. We had a girl do this back in the 80s, and people were still talking about it when I graduated in 2010. The girl spent 6 months in jail. The teacher took the rest of the year off but arrived back in the fall. He retired when I was a junior. My wife was dosed her second year teaching, 2 weeks into the year, and was placed on disability for the entire year plus a settlement with the school district because she should have had a co-teacher due to the number of kids in the room and did not. We argued that since the classroom was understaffed per contract it allowed her to be dosed. We ended up traveling for 10 months that year. Hell of a dose to end up on a 10-month trip. Story 3. There was a kid who walked up to the pencil sharpener and set the substitute teacher's hair on fire from behind her with a cigarette lighter and then claimed sparks had flown out of the light switch. Yeah, he's in prison for other stuff now. I bet he was the kid that liked to burn everything. Story 4. The boy that put a pipe bomb into another kid's locker because he talked to the girl the original boy liked. He went to a juvenile program and then disappeared. What happened to the victim? Did the bomb go off or was it found out before? It turns out the girl actually liked the pipe bomb and never gave the other guys a second thought. Story 5. Neutralize a kid in the middle of class over presumably nothing. It was a vocational school so we all had access to tools. A fight broke out in the welding shop and one kid smashed the other kid's skull with a welding pick. I never heard what the fight started over, but it's high school, so the answer is almost certainly nothing. That's the most insane thing I've read in a while. Who the duck does that? Story 6. I knew a lot of shitty people back in school, but I think the guys who dropped a whole desk out of a third-story window onto some kid qualify as the worst, purely because I think that qualifies as an attempted M. Damn, did he survive? I guess that's believable at third story, but at the right angle that seems like it could at least paralyze him. I don't know the exact specifics, but I know that he had multiple broken bones and had to spend quite a while in a hospital. I think his legs suffered the most. He had to walk with crutches when he came back to school. Fortunately, as far as I know, he recovered without any major long-term issues. Story 7. A girl at my school took the ashes of her recently deceased grandfather, baked it into cookies and handed the cookies out amongst her classmates. 9 students had eaten them before she revealed the urn and told them what she did. Did not expect to see this here. I kind of knew her and it was crazy when it happened. Story 8. The oldest sister of one of my classmates neutralized a pizza delivery person with the help of her boyfriend for $20 and a pizza. We did some pretty low things to pizza delivery drivers as teens, but that's taking it a little too far. Story 9. Neutralize his ex-girlfriend cause she dumped him for cheating on her. It wasn't my school but one of the ones nearby, so I knew a lot of people that went there. But basically similar thing without the death. She dumped him, he knew she went to school super early for sport. He followed her to the bathroom and stabbed her. I and the victim were 15 at the time, he may have been 2 but he was possibly a grade or 2 older. Story 10. Not me, but my daughter and her female friends in 9th grade. There was a boy who was disturbed who was making threats to the girls in his classes. Things like he was going to strangle them, rape them, knife them, all sorts of things. The girls told me he had photos of dead animals he'd neutralize, like kittens or a dog. I don't remember the specifics. Anyway, for whatever reason my daughter felt like telling me about it for the first time well into the school year, like in November or so. I had no idea this was going on until then. I called the teacher first, who was a man, and he was afraid of this kid. Teacher said to call the principal and gave me his number. Principal said, and I quote, "Lady, I have 1,200 students to deal with on a daily basis. I can't be worried about whether your daughter is safe at school." Which was the wrong thing to say, because it obviously pissed me off. He said that he put this kid and my daughter alone in a room and told them to essentially kiss and make up. Called the superintendent next, who was incredibly bowled over by the incompetence of the principal. He told me to call the police. Which was too late because I had already taken my daughter and 3 of her friends to the police to make reports and file for a restraining order. The next day the principal called to apologize, from the phone in the superintendent's office. The kid was removed from the classes with all of these girls, which was next to impossible. And less than a week was removed from the school. I think my daughter said that he's in prison now. There's 1,200 students and I can't be asked to do the job I was hired to do, what the principal actually said. Especially when it comes down to someone like that, 1,199 students in danger. That's not even a big school either. A lot are 4 times that size. My graduating class was around that size. What a useless shit bag. Story 11. Bullied other kids mercilessly. Stole cigarettes and alcohol from shops to sell to other kids for cash he used to buy weed. Him and his shitbag mates. A few years after high school him and 2 of his closest mates were hooning in their shitbox on the highway, playing chicken. It was night time and they had their lights turned off, and they were driving on the wrong side of the road with the intent to make other people flinch and dodge before they had to. Other driver didn't even know they were there and just drove a straight path. So because of that the other driver obviously didn't dodge or deviate, forcing them to flinch and they dodged off the side of a road, right into a huge gum tree. All 3 neutralize instantly 140 plus kmph impact on a hardwood tree. Small rural area so the whole town grieved over the tragic loss of 3 young lives but single kid who grew up around them knew better than to call it a tragedy. Bogan shitbags. Glad the other driver didn't see them and suffer their fate. Gladder that they're gone. That poor gum tree, though. We can all be thankful that their shitbaggery only neutralized them. Story 12. This shit reads like a story, I'll try to keep it short. Haven't thought about this in a while. I came from a very wealthy school. No troubles, no fights, no drugs, nothing except this one kid. He was a grade above me. Him and his mom got into a disagreement while on vacation in an Indian hotel. He ordered a banana and a steak knife from room service and decapitated his mother with it. Reports say he slit her throat. Her head was detached and they cozied up the article somehow, someway. Wonder how? Wrapped her up in sheets, threw her in a ditch and attempted to flee. He was caught in an airport and convicted as a juvenile. Since India doesn't give a duck and you can buy your way out, he only spent a year in a gated community sort of prison deal. He was only sentenced to 3 as well, which is a whole other ducking topic. Not only did he come back to our school and was thrown into my class now since he was a year behind our senior year. He dated a girl I was friends with and admitted he definitely did it. Her family silently moved her out, which was smart. This was about 2 months before we graduated. The icing on the cake, which pisses me off to this day and just sounds like a movie. He was the valedictorian of our class. A true psychopath. Genius level ducking nutbag, had the eyes, everything. You can't make this shit up. Reality is sometimes crazier than fiction. John Carlo Patton. People, if you want to look it up, John ducking Carlo Patton. His mother used to come to my house dressed up as Mrs. Claus along with another person as Santa around Christmas every year to make all the kiddos smile. Good childhood memories of her. Ducked me up a bit. Duck that kid. This is actually insane. Story 13. Swerved off a residential road at 50 miles per hour to try and run down one of the kids he bullied because he thought doing so would impress the girls he had riding in the car with him. Instead plowed into a brick wall at 50 miles per hour, and because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt because doing so is for dummy cowards, an exact quote from him according to later testimony, he went through the windscreen, soared across the front garden of the house whose wall he hit the front wall of the house and turned from a full human being into paste. The girl in the front passenger seat had every bone from her midsection down irreparably shattered because she had her feet up on the dashboard and is in a wheelchair. The girl in the back passenger seat cracked open her skull on the seat in front of her, was in a coma for like 2 years and has permanent brain damage. Bastard ruined 2 people's lives because he thought vehicular manslaughter would land him a threesome. The girl in the front is lucky to be alive. A friend of mine from childhood had a former babysitter die this way. The babysitter's sister was driving when they hit another car, and she died too, but they brought her back, and the driver's infant son was in the backseat. He had a broken arm. The babysitter would have survived with maybe a couple broken bones if she didn't have her seat reclined a bit with her feet on the dash. Story 14. Not the worst student but craziest thing to happen was freshman year. This kid got caught using a keylogger to steal teachers' gradebook logins to sell grade changes. He was also stealing credit card info. Kid got expelled and sent a revenge PPT to every student, teacher, and alumni from a random kid's email address that had photoshopped pictures of all the teachers and administrators and gangbangs and onto bestialities porn. Ran into him a few years ago and he actually graduated Harvard and is in real estate now. Have you thought about the fact he might have lied about Harvard? Who goes to Harvard to be a real estate salesman? Story 15. This kid was a few years younger than me. He clearly has some issues. They put all the troublesome kids in the theater department with us and so we got to see a lot of his shit firsthand. He would just destroy things. Like he would rip wooden panels off the side of the stage if you didn't stop him. After I graduated he came to school with a gun in his backpack and a hit list. No one was hurt, thank God. He posted about it on Facebook and if I remember correctly someone reported it and he was met by cops as soon as he walked into the school. The worst kid in middle school was unfortunately a bit obsessed with me. He would walk up behind me and touch my hair. It was awful. He kept writing me love notes and begging me to give him a chance. Summer break hit and the next year he'd forgotten about me. He was expelled for looking up porn in the computer lab. Before that though, we were in the same standardized testing classroom, and he got suspended for jerking off and according to the girl next to him, self-harming with a pair of safety scissors. Story 16. Junior high in the 90s. A guy was obsessed with a cheerleader. Ends up he had written detailed notes on an underground bunker and how he was going to kidnap that girl and a number of others on his list and keep them in this bunker. He was kicked out of the junior high when the notes were found. I've seen on Facebook that he's now seemingly normal and married with a child. Story 17. Sodomized another football player in the shed where they stored all their equipment. The victim shot himself in the head that summer and passed on. Sorry if this is a dumb question, but what does sodomized mean? Technically it's any private act that's not vaginal intercourse. Usually refers to anal nasty, but can be oral as well. Story 18. We had a kid bring a gun to school. A flare gun. He of course showed it off and accidentally fired it into a locker causing a fire. That is why everyone in my high school ended up being required to have only see-through or mesh backpacks. Hope he joined the Breakfast Club that following weekend. Piece of shit, violent racist. In high school he hit a kid with a brick and blinded him in one eye. A year after high school he shot and neutralized 2 people and is serving 40 years to life. The earliest he'll get out of jail is age 59. When I saw blinded in one eye for a second I thought Mark Wahlberg. Story 20. The worst was probably a group of lads that were known bullies. They were vile to anyone who did fit what they deemed attractive, despite being utter munter themselves. Unfortunately they targeted me. I was their main target the second I started high school. They were the year above me and I had to be homeschooled because of them. They would kick me, punch me, spit at me, rip up my workbooks, kick footballs at my face, shout vile stuff, and the worst, and the thing that forced me into being homeschooled, was they pushed me down a set of concrete stairs. I knew it was caught on CCTV but the school couldn't find that 2 minutes bit but found the footage from the entire rest of the day. The ringleader, Ashley, was the worst. I went home that day with blood covering my white blouse from a nosebleed and split lip, had bruises all down my back where he'd kicked me at the bottom of the stairs and from falling down the stairs, and a black eye. Ashley found it hilarious and the school stood by his side. It wasn't until I threatened to go to the police when the school magically found the 2-minute bit of CCTV and admitted he was in the wrong and gave me the most pathetic apology I've ever heard. He got a week of isolation. I took it further. Well, my parents did, and the school ended up being found at fault for blaming me and not dealing with the bullying from the start. They had 63 complaints from the 2.5 years I was there and did nothing. They ended up having to pay for my homeschooling tutors and deal with and process all my schoolwork until I finished at 16. Ashley ended up killing himself by driving way too fast on his motorbike down a dual carriageway and hitting a tree. There was a massive remembrance thing for him, but I was just glad he was dead. He could have easily neutralized me that day. I'll never ever forgive him, his gang of dipshits, or the school for what I went through. Even now at 27 I'm scared to go near men alone other than my partner. I am so sorry you were failed by those bullies and the school administrators. None of that is your fault. I'm glad you're here. Story 21. 4 high school thugs got together and stole a mini bike. Then they murdered the 13-year-old kid that caught them, by shoving rocks down his throat. Oh my god, duck. Well, they were all convicted primarily because a guy that most people believe was the 5th participant in the M rolled over on them and was the star witness at their trials. The assistant DA that prosecuted the case became his mentor, and the 5th kid went on to be a cop. Then he became the chief of police, while the assistant DA became the DA for the county. The chief of police then beat the hell out of a suspect that had broken into his car, and stole his gun and nasty toys, while the suspect was chained up. The chief then ordered other cops to fabricate a story to explain the man's injuries. The chief was later convicted and sentenced to 46 months. Meanwhile, his DA buddy was indicted on federal obstruction of justice charges for interfering in the investigation on behalf of the chief in the above incident. He resigned, was disbarred, convicted and sentenced to 5 years in a federal prison and fined $100,000. Story 22. This one happened technically after high school, but one guy I used to hang out with got arrested for having nasty with a 13-year-old when he was 25. I'm glad I ended that friendship after he graduated. Story 23. He was a complete a-hole all through middle and high school. He was 1 year ahead of me, so I got to witness all his stupid stunts for several years. 1 beat up on smaller, weaker, or less fortunate kids. 2 brought alcohol to school on a daily basis and made no secret about sneaking a nip between classes at his locker. For some reason, he was never caught, and I'll never understand that. 3 was considered the town bad boy and had a string of girlfriends on rotation, despite being an absolute jerk to them. Pretty sure he physically abused several of them. The girls would be his girl of the week and a few days later, show up with fresh bruises, split lips, or black eyes, and it was I fell down or I walked into a door, and suddenly, he had moved on to a new girl. He's in prison now for 3 separate charges of criminal private conduct, first deg, relationship. In other words, he very likely sexually abused/assaulted a younger relative, his own child, or a stepchild. I don't know the story, just glad he's been put away. Clarification, the charge doesn't have to mean there was a child involved, there are other factors that can result in that charge, but chances are very good that it was, based on his history. Earliest release date is 2025, latest date is 2057. Hoping he's in there for the max. My childhood/middle school/part of high school until he moved away crush is in prison now. He got into an armed standoff from his apartment with police while he was beyond drunk and wasted, shot at the cops a bunch and is now in prison for the rest of his life. It's bonkers sometimes to think about because he was a bit of a jerk but never a bully. Story 24. Not high school, but I went to middle school with this kid named Eric. He lit the inside of his desk on fire for the Lulus. He would scream during a test for 50 cents. He farted as loud as he could during class just for attention. He brought a gun to school before it was a thing. He just walked out of school one day and the sheriff's department looked for him for 2 days. The principal came to take him out of class one day and he crawled under a table. When the teacher tried to move the table to get to him, he crawled along with the table so he was still under it. That was such a funny day. They chased him for 20 minutes. He constantly stole stuff from teachers/classmates. Not sure what happened to him. We ended the school year and I never saw him again. His family may have moved. Story 25. There was a kid who would go around and take a shit in the bathroom sinks. They eventually caught him, but this went on for a while without anyone knowing who it was, so we referred to them as the poop phantom. The mad pooper. The butler. Story 26. To us high school students, we loved the kid, but the school principal thought otherwise. On our last day before graduation, the kid brought a big box of mini bouncy balls, pickup jack one size of a quarter, and poured them out downstairs from the top floor during the last lunch break. The entire staircase was filled with them. People were still able to go up and down the stairs because every student was grabbing as many as they could. The reason why was because all of them said class of 20XX. It was high quality print too. He said it was his gift of saying congratulations to our class of 20XX. Every student who knew him thanked him. But towards the end of the day, the principal said it was very immature and very irresponsible as some people fell down going up or down the stairs. They told us that they were suspended from graduating and would graduate without their class a month after. All of his friends were so upset because he helped a lot of them through studying and personal things like drug/abuse issues. On top of that, everyone else knew no one used the stairs during lunch break, and no one actually fell. We were a tight group the year of 20XX. I think us the students and even their parents complained to the principal because we saw the kid to attend the graduation and get his diploma. As an adult, I get why the principal was upset back then. But back then, that kid was cool. Story 27. Wasn't a bad kid because our school was pretty privileged, but he was universally disliked because he was generally arrogant and rude to everyone he spoke to. He was convinced he was some kind of genius and better than everyone and was blissfully unaware of the contempt everyone had for him. He thought he was popular even though every interaction resulted in some kind of rejection. In some ways I kind of envied him, having that level of blind confidence and not caring that people didn't like you. And now he's running Twitter.